Okay, Lori, I can only make you host. I can't do co-host for this.
Okay.
So I'm going to switch you over to host, okay?
No problem.
Better skin from your body wash? Try Olay Body Wash with skincare super ingredient collagen. Olay Body Wash with collagen hydrates to rejuvenate skin surface cells for healthier looking skin in just 14 days. From dry and dull to firm and radiant. So I can step into my day feeling my best in my skin. And now try Olay Body Lotion, which hydrates for visibly firmer skin that improves over time. Olay Body, fearless in my skin.
You're ready to start your own business, to turn that passion into a paycheck. All you need is a partner you can trust. Over the last 20 years, LegalZoom has helped start and support millions of small businesses. It's kind of our thing. We can help you set up your business and help you keep it running. You're ready. We are too. Start an LLC, corporation, or nonprofit.
No.
LegalZoom today. LegalZoom. Official.
Hi, Chancellor Ferebee. Welcome.
Good evening.
Hi, Amy. Welcome.
Good evening.
So glad you all could make it.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Hi, Lakeisha. I'm so sorry that I could not add your name. It's a name, so folks can see your name. did not let me go back and edit that. So I would love to have folks your full name.
Stereotype.
An often unfair and untrue belief that many people have about all
All or things with a particular characteristic are the same.
Stereotype. An unfair and untrue belief that
And we're going to give folks just a few more minutes to log in and then we will get started promptly. Thank everyone. We'd like to thank everybody for coming. And we know folks are just getting logged in, so we want to give them just a few minutes. Hello, Sharona. Thank you. How are you?
Good evening. I'm well. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Hi, this is Ella Hansen. I'm not quite sure why I can't get my video to work, but just wanted to let you know I'm here.
Thank you. Hi. Welcome.
Maybe they're not afraid, but they're on notice. In a way, it's like, you know, where in one sense I wish that it didn't exist, and I wish that I didn't sense, you know, that they were threatened just by my presence without even knowing who I am. Although I wish that it didn't exist, I'm kind of glad for it, because now it gives me like a goal, or gives me something to like try to debunk. And like the reason I smile on stage is because I know I'm completely crushing people's perceptions of not only what violin can do,
We'll give about one more minute.
like, but also of what a black man is capable of.
Okay. All right. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And so I'll first introduce myself. My name is Amber Golden. I am proud to serve as the School Home Association president of Duke Ellington School of the Arts. SHADE, as we are known to most folks, SHADE PTO. I am the parent of a 2021 graduate from visual arts, and the parent of a current freshmore, which translates to first year sophomore, in instrumental music. I am also the grateful beneficiary of Ellington's legacy, as I was a participant in SYEP programming and some of the year-round musical theater programming that was led by former Ellington students during the 1980s. So I would like to extend a special welcome to our panelists, so Chancellor Williams, Deputy Chancellor Amy Mastera, as well as Sharona Robinson, and who is our parent liaison, who've been working to help make this meeting possible. We have Ella Hansen from Brooke Pinto's office in Ward 2, Lakeisha Jordan from Chairman Mendelson's office, from the City Council. We welcome and appreciate you all, and my fellow parent leaders. I'm sorry, did I say Chancellor Williams? Chancellor Ferebee. But I also want to welcome my fellow parent leaders, our Vice President for Advocacy, Lori Moskowitz, our LSAT representative, Jessica Wodach, our alum, parent, alumni coordinator, all of the above, Ajamur Clovis, as well as our communications chair and parent leader, Juan Ulloa. So I just want to welcome everyone to the panel and thank you all for coming and allowing us to have this time and discussion about the house that Mike and Peggy built, that we love to call it, because we want to see Ellington around for the next 50 years and longer and stronger than it has been. So again, I welcome everyone in the attendee realm. joining the webinar tonight. We know how much you love Ellington, and so we are again here to learn more. So please put your information in the chat. If you are an alum, current, please put your department, the year you graduated or the year you anticipate graduating, parents, the same for your students. Thank you so much. So I'm going to keep my comments brief, and then we will hear from Chancellor Ferebee, and then we'll move right into the question and answer period. One of the things that has been a challenge for parents is to understand the complex structure of Ellington. For most of our lives, and Jessica, like I, DCPS graduates, Ellington was a DCPS school, but it's not quite, it hasn't been run quite as a DCPS school because it has been more of a partnership school, and that has evolved over time. So in our last parent meeting, some of the parents asked, they wanted to really understand what it looked like. So I'm going to share a quick diagram and just can give you the governance structure as it currently exists. So excuse my screen, there we go. Oh, excuse. All right. I'm just gonna have to make this a little larger, trying to go into mode. Excuse me as I just work with the technology so that I can see everything that I need to see. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm not able to keep it in presentation mode and see my notes at the same time. So I hope that everyone can see this diagram. Most of you know that Ellington started in 1974. And it was a DCPS school run in partnership with Mike Malone and Peggy Cooper K-Fritz, who had the vision for a pre-professional program to reach students who wouldn't normally have access to such programming back in the late 60s, early 70s. And so Duke Ellington Project was formed. And so the teachers all fell under the umbrella of DCPS and were paid by DCPS, but they had the unique ability to oversee the dual arts curriculum. So we had a longer school day, which had academics in the morning that went to about 2 o'clock. And then in the afternoon, we extended the school day to go from 2 to 5 to have the arts block. And so students would have a pre-professional program ready to either enter university, enter conservatories, or enter the workforce as professional artists. One of the other things that I would like to mention about the structure, it evolved over time. Ellington Fund was established in 1982. It is made up by members who agree to give $10,000 or solicit donations of that or more. There is a spot for an alumni rep. There's also a place for the SHADE president, myself. So I do attend those meetings as well as the DSEP board. Now, the names that you see on top are the different partners that inform the curriculum and the running of the school. And so they make up the DSEP board. So there's members from the Ellington Fund, the Kennedy Center, George Washington University, from the community, DCPS, SHADE PTO, a faculty rep from the school. And more recently, we have added an LSAT rep on the finance committee to help inform that. And then there's DCPS. Now, DSAP is responsible for implementing the curriculum and running the school based on the 2000 procurement contract. And DCPS and the principal and head of school then answers to DSAP as well as the principal. We must meet the requirements of DCPS or exceed. So we have to meet or exceed whatever the DCPS academic requirements, in addition to the arts programming that we offer. DSAP board as well as DCPS both have a role in selecting the principal. Both have to approve, or we go back to the drawing board. So I know a lot of folks don't necessarily see this diagram to know that there were all of these entities involved. So we thought that it was an important level set to put this piece here. Now this, like I said, this didn't start with this structure because we were all under DCPS. DSAP board was established in 1999, right about the time that charter schools came to DC. It is a partnership school as opposed to a charter school structure. One of the challenges that DSAP ran into under Chancellor Michelle Rhee was that there were massive program cuts, and what the faculty of DSA did was, instead of losing positions, they came together and said, well, we'll take a temporary pay cut as the, and so that everyone still has a job. So then many became DSAP employees as opposed to DCPS employees. And that was 2011. In 2012, the Washington Teachers Union renegotiated, and a lot of teachers got a raise. Those who stayed on got a raise. And we've been struggling ever since to have our teachers brought back into DCPS. And so it's important to also note that our teachers, both working artists and the core academic teachers, were all under DCPS and had a process for establishing highly qualified teachers based on their professional work experience, and that was negotiated with DCPS. And so that is the basic governance structure that has existed, and just in a quick overview. And so one of the things that has been really important for us that has led to the call for this meeting has been this ongoing underfunding. In 2017, again, under previous chancellor, we were right at the cusp of having our dual curriculum program acknowledged and moving into a gradual process of having the school fully funded, all of the arts teachers. And then he had to leave, and this is when you, Chancellor Ferebee, were brought on. And so then we had to go back to the drawing board. And so, we've been pushing to have the contract renegotiated so that our teachers have equitable pay. And we thought it was extremely important because of all of the schools, particularly the specialty schools like Walls and like Banneker. We do not have academic admissions requirements, right? As long as you have talent and you're willing to learn, we bring and welcome students from all 8 wards of the city, as you know, with the majority of the students coming from wards 5, 6, 7, and 8. Traveling a great distance, honestly. And so we were really shocked. We were dismayed, and we were actually kind of outraged when the language of a takeover came out in the News 4 story, because our understanding was that we were going in to say, let's make this process more efficient. Can we work together to get our teachers back under DCPS? Can we reduce these costs that we have for human resources, put that back under DCPS, and continue with the dual curriculum and just having a more efficient program so more resources can go to the students and meeting the needs of the students. And so we really wanted to understand where we are in the process, what your vision is for the school. And I don't want to say too much because our parents have lined out the questions, but I think it is just really important for, I guess, the parents who are coming on. I wanted to give them that primer and just say, again, the equity that Ellington has provided, because even though we don't have academic admissions, our outcomes are up there with Walls and Wilson and Banneker. Our students are performing well. Many of our students come in underperforming, but by the end of the term, they get, by the end of their time, they come up to grade level or beyond. We have a 99%, as you know, graduation rate. We're meeting all of the metrics that go for a high performing school that schools are measured by. So the language of a takeover, which is usually used for a school that's failing, was baffling. And so again, we have questions about your vision for governance, your vision for the arts program, at the transition of the teachers. So lots of questions that we have around this. Parents are concerned, parents are nervous, students are concerned. They want to know that as an artist, right? Where is my safety? This is why I chose Ellington, because this is my safe space. This is where I get to pursue the career path that I want to pursue, because there's no other way for me to get this training. So we want to share the questions that have come up around the negotiations and start this conversation so that parents can really understand the DCPS position and how such a transition as you envision it would actually strengthen the school for the next 50 years. So I'm going to turn over at this time to you for opening remarks, and then we will move into questions. Thank you.
Good evening again. Thank you for the opening remarks. It's an honor to be with you. And I think I should start with, first, again, gratitude for the history. I think it's always important to go back in time and understand where we are and why we are here. So from my view, we're here, and DCPS has had robust negotiations with DCEP about the future of Ellington. And we have mutual interests to preserve a very strong arts program at Duke Ellington. As you've outlined, there are amenities to the program that are outside of the traditional school model, which requires additional resources that we would like to find a way to support. As you also outlined, there's interest in, and I believe it's mutual interest in DCPS taking a more active role in human resource and operation functions, and also closing a gap in compensation in a way in which Duke Ellington staff would be compensated with the same standards and alignment to DCPS educators, and ultimately have access not only to pay, but benefits as well that we think are attractive for Duke Ellington employees. So we've been having discussions about how that would happen. We've been having those discussions with the DSAP board, and we made some progress. As you noted, though, there was some media reporting that I think colored the negotiations in a way that it was perceived much more negative than we would like. And I think that has slowed down the discussions most recently, but I am confident and optimistic that there is goodwill in those discussions. And it's my hope that we'll be able to reach an agreement on how we fulfill the interests around those topics that I just mentioned. So that's where we are. We most recently has issued a letter to the DSAP board around some of the topics that they've raised to us, such as school leader operations, curriculum, and the like that we've responded to. So I'll stop there. As you said, you probably have lots of questions, and we'll respond to those as we can. And again, want to hear from me directly that there is a commitment to preserving the program. I think the financial sustainability of the program is important. I think one of the points in the history of the school is that I think there were a lot more efforts around fundraising and development that currently doesn't exist in the same way, which I think has created a need for some financial supports in a different way. And we're happy to provide that, but we also want to ensure that there are clear lines of accountability and responsibility. So again, we hope to get to those answers and resolutions sooner rather than later with the DSAP board.
Thank you so much for that those opening remarks. I will turn the first question over to Ajamor Clovis, parent and alum. And
hello, my name is Ajamari Clovis. I am a theater department alum from 2002, and I'm also a parent. My daughter is in TDP, which is Technical Design and Production, and she's a junior. Our school is very unique in that we have this dual curriculum, which is academics and arts. And here at Ellington, the arts and the academics merge together. So they're not separate, but they are merged together. With our dual curriculum, the students receive pre-professional arts certification in one of 8 disciplines. Our school day is longer than the typical DCPS school day. So our school day is from 8:30 to 8:30 to 4:55 p.m. During performance season, I think it's important to say that that day can run until 8 p.m. During with pre-production and rehearsals, and during the performance runs, it can run until 10 p.m. Our academic block ends at 2 p.m., 1:55, and the arts block starts at 2 p.m. We have a full staff of artists who are working as teachers. I want to reiterate that our arts teachers are professional artists within their fields who have done years of studying and years of qualifications to now teach to other budding artists. So we're clear on what the vision of Ellington is, right? This is our vision. Chancellor, if this isn't your vision, can you tell us what it is for a premier arts school? Because it seems as though arts is not something that is important, and it appears as though it can be treated as though anyone can teach a dance class or anyone can teach an artist how to draw, and that's just simply not true. So what is your vision for a premier arts school?
Yeah, I agree. So first of all, thank you for choosing DCPS. I know you have lots of options. We don't see the arts program different, and when I say we, DCPS and me personally, than what's currently in operation. So I had the honor to spend extensive time at Duke Ellington, and actually had a full day there this school year. And I think what's there is working for students, and so I don't have a different vision for the programming than what exists. What we do have a vision for is financial stability, and ensuring that we're able to provide the level of compensation for teachers and staff in the same way we do for other DCPS teachers across the district. As you've outlined, there are non-traditional hours that need to be supported. And so our goal is to find a path forward where that can be supported as well. So in terms of the curriculum and the framework for the programming, I don't have a vision for anything different than what currently is in place, and certainly recognize that there are professionals there that have a unique level of expertise and deliver on high quality instruction for students.
Okay. I'd like to be clear that I hear you when you say you agree with our curriculum, but your responses to us regarding that aren't the same. So what you just said to me and what we received earlier in terms of your response to our arts curriculum are 2 different responses.
Could you expound, please?
Maybe I could hop in with a question that follows up on that.
Sure.
Good evening, Chancellor, and hi to everyone out there. My name is Jessica Wodach. I am native Washingtonian and pre-K-12 DCPS grad, an LSAT member at Duke, and my daughter is in the theater department in 9th grade. So Chancellor, you mentioned the letter that you recently sent to DSAP, and in that communication you shared, quote, that DCPS intends to do a comprehensive review of the curriculum in the coming years. The DSAP board cannot hold veto power over any changes to the current arts curriculum, end quote. So I think that's the kind of statement that has parents and students angry, alarmed, and very concerned. And I think there are 3 questions about that. So first, as Amber explained at the beginning, Duke Ellington currently has arts professionals and experts as board members. So we're curious if DCPS were going to do a review of the curriculum. Who are your arts experts? What kind of, who would you rely on? We want to know what you would do with the curriculum. You've been pretty clear there that you're going to review it. So we want to know what are you planning to do? And then we had a number of questions from students tonight that are extremely worried that you plan to cut their departments. And so students and parents are also looking for confirmation that you are committed to all of the departments that Duke Ellington currently has.
Yes, so let me go back. So we were given language that pretty much states that now and for the foreseeable future that Duke Ellington or DSAT would have complete oversight over the curriculum, which, as you know, has financial implications, right? And so our concern there is what services we are provided have to be aligned to what we can support financially. If DCPS is going to be responsible for the budget. Now, if Duke Ellington wants to operate independently, as it has been, then you certainly have that right. But if we're going to take on operation and supporting the curriculum and academics of the program, we believe that we should have some oversight over that. Now, we are open to how that can happen collaboratively. And I say that word collaboratively, and I mean that across the board. I think there are ways in which we can be collaborative. And one example is, I think we have proposed some ways in which we both can be accountable for and have input on the principal, which I know which was of interest as well. So I believe that there is a way that we can be collaborative to ensure that what's in place is preserved. But we do have to consider our budget, and our budget does change every year. Some years we have more resources, some years we have less, and we have to adjust accordingly. In terms of when we do curriculum audits, which we regularly do for all of our schools, for our content areas, we rely both on internal and external expertise.
I appreciate that response. I think the question is, and we're all here because we love Ellington so much, and so I'm gonna say what I think people are reading between the lines. So when you say that the budget changes every year and we have to be responsive to it, what we hear is you may cut things, you may cut whole programs, and so I just want you to understand that is what we take back.
Yeah. So yeah. Let me be clear about that. Let's say 2 years from now, something unforeseen happens and the DCPS budget has to be reduced by 10%. I'm just giving you an example. Don't foresee it happening, but it could happen, right? I can't operate a system where all the schools in DCPS would take a share of that reduction, but Duke Ellington would not. And so if for some reason, if we have less resources, it would impact every school in the district, not just Duke Ellington. And so we have a certain level of fiscal responsibility that we have to consider in that scenario. It's not the intent to change the program. It's not an intent to cut the program, but our central service budgets, our school budgets are dependent upon the budget that we receive annually that is presented by the mayor and ultimately approved by the council. And that is aligned to revenue that is generated by taxpayers and residents.
Okay. Thank you for that. I think I know there are more follow-up questions to this, but I'll get down the list.
And let me go back because one of the questions that was just raised is like students, staff are worried about cutting the programs.
Mm-hmm.
If our resources maintain, there isn't a desire to make cuts to Duke Ellington for the sake of making cuts to Duke Ellington. And so I want to be clear that we wouldn't approach this in a way in which we would treat Duke Ellington different than any other DCPS school.
Okay, thank you for that feedback. I think we do understand that the cuts will be felt across the city. But I think that in the process of dealing with the cuts, what parents want is the assurance that the programs themselves would be maintained. For example, museum studies. There, to my knowledge, is not another museum studies program at this level, particularly putting out as many students of color prepared to do curation and the other jobs associated in that realm. And you can't go anywhere in the world. You can, well, let me say, you can go just about anywhere in the world and find Duke Ellington's footprint. And we want to make sure that that diverse pipeline throughout the country is maintained. So I think we really do understand budgetary necessity, but it really is about what comes first, right? In your mind, in terms of if something gets cut, what's first? Is it a program? Is it the school day? Where does that decision get made about where things have to be pulled back?
Well, first, we all in DCPS are schools that are funded on enrollment, right? So enrollment is the first consideration.
Mm-hmm.
Money follows the student through the uniform per student funding formula for DCPS and public charter schools in the city. So the first consideration is ensuring that there is continued enrollment in Duke Ellington at the current level. Mm-hmm. And to be clear, we have maintained funding at pretty steady levels despite some shifts in enrollment. But those are the types of decisions that we work with schools on with what we call our local school advisory teams. Mm-hmm. So let's say each school is having to reduce their budget by 10% for whatever reason. Typically, that's not a DCPS Central Services Director decision. Those decisions are typically made at the school level with the local school advisory team. Local schools advisory team and the administration makes that determination based on the local context for the school. In some cases in the past has been they adjust class sizes. And in some cases, they decide that they want less materials and resources that they purchase that are non-personnel. It looks different school by school. So there isn't a prescription that we provide to schools of how to do that. We understand that the local context for each school is very different. And so DCPS would not be in a position to, based on our current procedures and protocols, say, hey, Duke Ellington cut this program or cut this department. Okay. As we would expect there would be equity across the system, we would expect that there would be equity across the school in how decisions are made when we have additional resources, which we hope we'll continue to have, or when we have less. But those decisions are made typically at the school level.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to turn the next question over to Juan Loa.
Good evening, Chancellor Ferebee. Thanks for joining us tonight. My name is Juan Ulloa. I'm the parent of an LMC sophomore who is a DCPS lifer. So, speaking of funding, right now, DC Public Schools funds Ellington as if it were a traditional curriculum school, i.e. 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. As Ajamore clearly stated, the Ellington day goes from 8 to 5 and during performance season easily until 10 o'clock at night. And while I appreciate the need to look at the needs of each school individually, again, the funding as it has been recently implies otherwise. So I need to ask, are you committed to fully funding our complete program, meaning academic and arts, And by arts, I mean dance, instrumental music, literary media and communications, museum studies, technical design and production, theater, visual arts, and vocal music. Now, I understand that funding changes year to year. There are stresses, and I'm sure that we as an entity, when we need to make cuts, appropriate cuts, we will do so. But as has already been reiterated, my daughter is an LMC student. LMC and museum studies typically come up in the talk of what's going to be quote unquote cut. I want to know specifically how committed you and DCPS are to fully funding our arts as it stands right now.
Yeah, so we remain committed to funding the program as it stands right now. Our schools that have special programs receive what we call specialty payments, which recognize that their service model is different from other schools in the district. And it also recognizes that there are additional resources needed to support the program. So for example, at Duke Ellington, the specialty payment amount is $3.2 million. So that is on top of what we would typically provide to a high school in DCPS. And that recognizes the additional services that are part of the instructional model. And again, there's no intent to modify that. But as I mentioned earlier, you know, I think it would be irresponsible for me to commit to a level of funding for now and forevermore, right? Because I wouldn't be in a position to provide that. What we can say to you, if there are any changes to our budget, it would be equity across the system. And that represents how we've done it in the past. But I want to be really clear that we do recognize that the program is different and we fund the school differently. Now, what we've been discussing specifically with DSAP is an additional payment that addresses compensation for employees, which would be on top of that.
And I appreciate you mentioning the employees, because I've testified before the council several times that if you look at the current budgeting structure that DCPS has put forth, and take into account the majority of our staff, the majority of our Black and brown students being taught by Black and brown people, and on average, our teachers have made $25,000 less than their DCPS counterparts. I have been touting this for well over a year and a half, and I appreciate you being here today to hear me speak about this, because I think in and of itself, it is imperative that leaving here today, we come to some sort of resolution, avenue, path to make sure that the professionals that are teaching our children are frankly paid fairly. It's imperative, because if, as you well know, sir, we are losing teachers left and right in the District of Columbia. And we have an opportunity to stem the tide here at Ellington. And that's exactly what we need to do today. But thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. And to be clear, again, we're committed to the compensation. I think what we need to do is have a little bit more discussions with DSAP about what that means for employees to be compensated as DCPS employees. But I also want to clarify, in our analysis, while there are some employees who don't earn at the same level as DCPS employees, there are employees who earn at a higher level than DCPS employees as well. And so what we learned through that process, there isn't a very structured salary allocation model for DSAP employees, and that really needs to be recalculated. And we want to ensure that there is greater equity in how people are compensated, because we couldn't make a determination based on the salaries that we receive, how they were determined. So we want to be more transparent with that. And again, we want to compensate people at the same level.
Thank you for that. As a follow-up question to the pay piece, while the majority of our teachers are underpaid. While there may be a few who receive more than well, one is, will you release that information in terms of your analysis back to DSAP so that they can see who you have is qualified and where they stand within your analysis and the DCPS structure for our understanding, because we really want to see what that budget analysis is from the DCPS perspective. And then the other piece is, historically, again, up until 2012, what that pay equity looked like was DCPS covered all of the teachers. They had the benefits, human resources was under DCPS, all of that was committed to by the mayor, by the chancellor, by the school board, again, as it has transitioned. What the Ellington Fund was put in place for was to tune pianos, to cover field trips, to cover supplies, ballet shoes. Now we have had development directors to come in, and we've been able to secure additional funding to help some departments. But again, it's not enough to cover a whole department. It's not enough to cover staff. It was to supplement what DCPS was doing, because DCPS had shared the vision of a pre-professional program and fully funding that in terms of covering the teaching staff, covering the building, and those associated costs. So we get a additional payment. Now, we don't get payment for athletics. We don't get payment for after school clubs or activities, which we're not. We are a dual curriculum program, but there are a lot of other funds that schools get that Ellington does not. And we're not clear how the new number, how that formula, what formula is used to determine how much Ellington actually gets every year, given that we have the history of DCPS supporting all of the teachers, with the exception of a very select few. So if you could talk a little bit more about our funding, the funding that we do get and how that money is allocated or determined.
Yes, so currently we allocate the dollars to DSAP and then they compensate their employees. That's the current structure. There's been interest expressed from DSAP that, as you described, that they would become, on a day in terms of DSAP employees would become DCPS employees. So they've expressed interest in that. We've expressed interest in that as well.
Okay.
And what we've said is we will be happy to work with DSAP on a pathway for licensure for teachers. And if they're not licensable, we will create a pathway for them to be DCPS employees, be compensated accordingly, and have access to DCPS events, benefits. And we think that is the best world for the future of Duke Ellington, because all boats rise together, right? So we're currently negotiating with our teachers now on our next contract.
Chancellor, super excited to hear you say that you're interested in an alternate pathway. I think that hasn't been clear in the conversations thus far. And one thing that we know is there are alternate pathways in the district, right? So Phelps has pathways for vocational teachers. Charter schools by the state are given an opportunity to set their own highly qualified standards for teachers. We are very concerned about our working artists who teach our students. It's not often that you can have folks with such incredible professional experience. And so up to this point, what we have heard from DCPS is that you will give them a certain amount of time to get credentialed under the rules of DCPS. We are interested in an alternate pathway that would allow our working artists to be qualified, to be considered qualified, in a way that is appropriate for the state. I know other states have those alternate pathways for working artists. So I'm happy to hear you say that you are committed to an alternate pathway. I'd love if you could talk just a little bit more about that so we have a sense of what that could look like.
Yeah, I would love to. Well, let me back up. You said on multiple occasions you've heard from DCPS. So let's clarify that. When you say you heard from DCPS, what would be that channel? Because I think
that would be DCPS to DSAP and then sharing with us.
So what your references is what you've heard from DSAP that DCPS has communicated.
Yes, I believe I've seen it in writing, at least in this most recent letter as well, that you are interested in using the pathway that all DCPS teachers have. And so I'm delighted to hear that there's another one, but that's what we'd like to hear about.
Yeah, and I think going forward, we need to create a communication channel that provides regular updates to you on our negotiations with DSAP. Because what I'm hearing is, well, we heard from DSAP, or DSAP said this, and I think it'll be important that you hear the same messages, both from DCPS and DSAP. But to go back to what I said, we are certainly open to pathways, and you're correct. We have individuals at Phelps who have an alternative licensure solution. Now, those individuals are not licensable, which means there isn't a current licensure that exists for them, which is why we can take that alternative pathway. If you are an English teacher and there is a licensure pathway for you, we would expect for you to pursue licensure and gain licensure. And so I think we're talking about two different groups of employees when we're talking about licensure and alternatives. There's individuals that are licensable, and there's individuals that may not be licensable because there isn't a current licensure pathway that exists for them. We've already previewed this with the Office of the State Superintendent of Education, and their team is also committed to working with us on pathways for Duke Ellington teachers. What we said no to, and you can see this in our recent letter to DSAP, the request that we got was that teachers should have a choice to choose whether or not they want to be a DSAP employee or a DCPS employee. And we're not interested in a model where we have two different groups of employees at that magnitude in the same building, nor do we believe it brings the pay parity and consistency and sustainability to the program as we've been discussing today. So we've communicated back, our preference is to find a pathway to get everyone licensed or clear our alternative licensure pathway, and to ensure that they're compensated and receive benefits like all other DCPS employees. And I think that's possible.
I know Juan's going to jump in just a moment, but I did just want to say there's still one little wrinkle that we do want to work out, which is that currently the licensing standards for some of the arts teachers would not allow some of our working artists to be teachers. And so that's one of the wrinkles that we still want to work with you on. And
if it doesn't, if they're not licensable, so like what they do as maybe accompanists, or there's another role that they may have, if it doesn't fit cleanly into a licensure pathway currently, we're open to creating those pathways. And again, we've already started those conversations with the Office of State Superintendent of Education, who oversees licensure. So I don't want the licensure conversation to be a barrier, because I think we can work through that. What we need to do, though, is I think we need to make a commitment that that's the expectation that we have for our staff.
Well, thank you, Chancellor. I think we all can agree that we look, Duke has been attracting some of the best and brightest minds to teach our kids, and that's what we continue to expect, frankly. But I appreciate your comments. Going back to the communication piece, and as a communications professional myself, 30 years in public relations, I appreciate it. So you know, that is a sticking point for me, for sure. As part of the current governance structure, DC Public Schools has a seat on the DSAP board. So in essence, DCPS is DSAP, along with George Washington, the Kennedy Center, so on and so forth. However, under multiple chancellors, DCPS has not actively participated on the board, which I think has contributed to some of the imperfect communication. And I appreciate you making the effort to improve it at this point in time. My question to you is, given the current governance structure, can you identify a specific staff member to fulfill the role as DCPS's legal representative on the DSAT board?
Yeah, I'd have to dig into that a little bit more. I mean, we're not opposed to serving on the board, but quite honestly, one, that hasn't been our priority. At least that hasn't been my priority in my tenure. I think, Amber said it best. Like when I entered the district, there was a lingering contract that was unresolved, and getting some type of long-term agreement that serves Duke Ellington well has been my focus. So if we think it's going to be helpful for us to have representation on the board, again, I'm not opposed to that, but I think that doesn't solve the issues of the day from my view. The issues of the day is to get a concrete future for Duke Ellington where all of us can communicate to the students in the building, the staff in the building, and future students of Duke Ellington. We have a plan for you. And this is how we plan to continue to support the school. So yeah, I would have to learn more about, what would be expected of us to serve on the board and what capacities we would have.
No, I appreciate that. And I appreciate you being candid about that. However, this seat has been available for what, 20 years? And the contract has been in effect for that long. It's not necessarily unresolved. Frankly, I think it's a matter of a perspective, but I do believe that perhaps had all the seats at that table have been filled, perhaps we wouldn't be at this point today. So I think this is an important first step for us to kind of get to that point where we can work in true partnership. And I see that you seem committed to that, and I appreciate you for it.
Yeah, if that gets us to a long-term agreement, let's work on that tomorrow. Like that, I think that's not a heavy lift. What worries me honestly is like we haven't been able to reach a long-term agreement, and my hope is sooner rather than later we're able to reach that agreement and start to focus our attention on the path forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question for you. So one of our non-negotiables is about the principal, which is also one of your non-negotiables, right? The DSAT board wants the principal to report to DSAT, as the principal has for years. You stated that that's not the structure for all DCPS schools to ensure accountability for the outcomes, right? I think we need to be clear that this isn't a regular DCPS school, so we cannot treat it as a regular DCPS school. Duke Ellington has strong student outcomes, and our principal hasn't reported to DCPS for years. So I would like to know what's the reason now, why you aren't willing to consider alternative solutions to the principal being a DCPS employee?
Yeah. So transparently, the current structure actually isn't serving us well. Okay. And as you may have paid attention to local in the media, we've had some issues at Duke Ellington. I'll leave it there. And I think there has been some broken lines of accountability between DCPS and administration. And I need those to be solid lines. And we also would not want to have a structure where the employees in the building, the vast majority are DCPS employees, and then they're supervised and held accountable by an individual that is hired by and accountable to a partner. That individual needs to be accountable to DCPS and to our employees. There are policies and procedures that we need to adhere to, and we need to ensure that there are clean lines of oversight. And quite honestly, those lines are as clean as I would like for them to be today. And there's been issues that have come up where there have been some policy issues that have not necessarily been followed the way we would have liked in accordance with DCPS policy. And we're serving DCPS students. So without getting too granular in the details, there's just been some conflict there that I need to resolve. And the DSAP board is aware of those issues.
Okay. Thank you for that. Chancellor. I just want to follow up on a couple of things with the reply, particularly around the issues, because this all blew up, right, around the News 4 investigative report. And that's when, we get the word of a takeover as opposed to renegotiating the.
And why I would appreciate this, that we didn't support or sanction that communication. That was not a part of our communication strategy. That is not the way I would have framed our discussions to date with DSAP. So I just want to be clear with that. That doesn't represent our thoughts about the path forward.
Thank you for that clarity. That's very important to us. But I do want to talk a bit about the line of communication in a couple of places where trust has been broken down. And perhaps you can provide some clarity. We get these reports. So, we've had town halls talking about our Title IX issues. And while this isn't strictly governance, it really does speak back to what you're saying. And so I understand your concern about who answers to who. But our understanding is, and what was reported was that DCPS did get word that these assaults took place and decided, again, whether it was under your tenure or the previous chancellor, that, well, these are DSAP employees and whether they're DCPS students or not, that's not for us to handle. They were reported among the proper channels, but different entities did not follow through. And so I just want to be kind of clear about where or at least for me to understand, where was the breakdown? If you got the report and then they show in writing on the screen that DCPS determined that it was not their responsibility, where was the breakdown in communication in relation to those things?
Yeah, I can't speak to, again, details prior to my tenure. What I can say is, in scenarios that we've had in my tenure, there hasn't always been a tight alignment to DCPS policy in the way in which things will be handled according to our policies and procedures.
Okay.
Now, I don't think it serves us well to try to get into those details.
Not tonight.
And I think that, we have a strong leader. I have the utmost respect for Sandy Logan, and you probably won't find a leader who works harder than she does to ensure that our students get what they need. So I want to be clear, this is not an indictment on the leadership of Principal Logan. And if we to reach an agreement tomorrow and the consensus is that needs to be our leader, I got both hands up in support. What I do need, though, I do need a clearer line of accountability because I do think there are time periods in which there is demands and expectations from DSAP, and then there are demands and expectations from DCPS. And anyone who's ever been in that structure understands the complications of that and how the complexity of that can be very difficult when Principal Logan has a supervisor from DCPS, but she also gets evaluated by DSAP. And I can give you many more examples. And I don't think we're serving her well in this current structure. And I think we need to have greater role clarity. And I think it starts with some of the accountability measures that I mentioned earlier. And you know, she would definitely have a perspective on that. And I would encourage you to get her perspective on that as well.
Indeed. And I'm just looking at the time and I can't believe that it's 7 o'clock already. I thought we were going like run out of time and things to say, but we could keep going clearly for probably another 2 hours because we didn't even get to all of the questions that we have. So I have one last point that I do want to make on the lines of communication, which even kind of brings us to this meeting and why we're grateful that you came so that we could hear directly from you. And that had to do with the report to the city council that led them to believe that negotiations were signed, sealed. You know, I'm about to start singing Stevie Wonder, signed, sealed, delivered, we were all done. And that was not the expectation that any of us had. We thought that we were still within the negotiation, and within that negotiation to maintain a good bit of the structure with considerable input from the DSAT board on the curriculum. But we have heard from you tonight on your vision. Clearly the questions were coming in the chat fast and furious, so we could not get to all of them, but we will share them so that we can continue this conversation and follow up. But I just want to thank all of you all for coming, and out of respect for everyone's time, I'll have to close out, but we really appreciate this time so we could hear directly from you. So thank you all very much.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to be clear that and again, I'll look back at it. I don't think there's anything in the presentation that we sent to the council, which was a mandate from the council that communicated that we have reached an agreement.
Okay.
We're optimistic. And again, I'm very hopeful. And DSAP has a strong leader in Jeanette McClure, who we talk with regularly and I talk with directly. And so we both committed to good faith negotiations. So I think we'll get there. And I would be remiss if I left the conversation and didn't address one of the comments in the chat, and that is DCPS needs to be more accountable too. And I wouldn't agree with that comment more. I think there's certainly opportunities for us to deepen our accountability to our students. And I'm hopeful that we will create a pathway to do so. And I also want to be really clear and go back to what I started with, and that is we have a mutual commitment to preserve the integrity of the program. And whether you are a parent, you're a graduate, you're a staff member, I want you to hear that directly from me. And the intent is not to create barriers, but create new opportunities for students through greater support. And we've already shared with DSAP what that support will look like financially. So my hope is that we are able to reach agreement sooner rather than later. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you directly, and you get a chance to hear from me. And we will provide you more updates as we have them to share. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. And thank you everyone who attended. We really appreciate you coming and adding your question and your voice because we believe that representation matters, and we are all Ellington family. We are Ellington, as we like to say. So we really appreciate you all coming out tonight. Thank you all. Good night. And we do invite you all, alumni, everyone is welcome to the SHADE meeting, the regular SHADE meeting tomorrow night at 8.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Amber?
Yes.
Do we need to do anything to save the chat?
It should all be automatic.
Okay, great.
So the video, audio, as well as chat should be saved.
Right.
Okay. And I hit save again just to be safe. So we should be good. See you on the other side.